and welcome to the Divorce Women's Guide podcast, where we talk about the things us divorcees are thinking, but not always talking about, as we turn our divorce into the best gift we've ever been given. And I do so with a little bit of sass and a whole lot of class. I am your host, Wendy Sterling, founder of the Divorce Rehab. I am here to support you in this transition phase of your life so you can start your new best chapter on your own terms. After all, that's what I did after my own divorce. And now it is my mission to change the conversation around divorce and help you see why your divorce, like mine, was the best gift you ever received. Hello and welcome to today's episode. I am so happy that you're here. Today, I'm going to talk about a topic that I hear all the time in my private Facebook group, as well as when I talk with my clients. And that topic today is all around narcissism. And what I'm going to focus on with you in this episode are the three things that I believe narcissists fear the most. And you're going to want to stay tuned until the very end, because I'm going to reveal what I actually think is the most terrifying thing to a narcissist. So let's jump in. So the first thing that narcissists fear the most is exposure. You see, narcissists are, by their very definition, extremely consumed with their image, right? How other people actually perceive them, how people see them. And narcissists are extremely invested in that image. So you might say that they actually consider it part of their survival, their own sense of being and their sense of self in terms of how they exist in the world. Because their own sense of self depends on what we see over time as actually a false image of who they are. But yet they've invested so much effort and time in projecting that self-image outwards. And having, or rather, people knowing that that false image exists, and the thought of it being exposed is terrifying to them. So what does that mean for those of us who have to engage with, co-parent with a narcissist? Well, at first thought, we all think, well, I can change them. They'll listen to me. If I tell them 10 more times, maybe I'll get through to them, right? Maybe they'll actually hear me telling them who they are. And yet somehow their resistance in listening to us further pushes us to give them even more examples of who it is that we see, right? And unfortunately for them, it's an image that they don't want you or the rest of the world to know exists. Because narcissists live for being admired, and their pride means so much to them. So when you would do something that could actually make them look bad in the eyes of other people, or God forbid, make them feel ashamed, oh my God, you guys, it is one of the most dreaded experiences for them. And listen, shame isn't pleasant for anybody, right? None of us like to feel shame. But for a narcissist, it is truly like a death sentence. So the second thing that a narcissist fears is any sort of defiance. So let's define that, because my interpretation of that word could be different from yours. So in this context, what defiance means to me is a loss of control, meaning they feel out of control of you. So let's paint a picture. What does that look like? So what that means is that you're not acting, you're not saying, you're not doing what they have come so used to you doing or saying, right? It's like you wake up to who they are all of a sudden, right? Which means that instead of going along with them, you're actually reacting. So when we speak with them, right? When we re-engage with a narcissist, even though we've woken up and we re-engage with them, what ends up happening is that we actually wind up falling back into our old patterns of being when we're around them, right? That's why we go back and continue to try to tell them who they are. Maybe if we tell them one more time, or if we tell them a little bit, differently, or with a little bit more anger, they'll finally hear. But imagine when you show defiance, what actually happens. So when you're telling a narcissist no, right? And you're like embodying the no, you're in the no, you mean the no, and you have a full intention of holding your ground, standing in your power of no, what ends up happening to them is they become really afraid, really, really scared. And what they're fearful of are the lies and exaggerations that you used to believe, that you used to buy, will be exposed. So narcissists are incredible liars. They're incredible at exaggerating things to make themselves appear more important or impressive. And they also do this to make themselves feel better about their own standing in the world. So it's not just about getting called out that would bring them shame or show them less than who they want to be seen as. It's the fact that it reveals to the world how weak and insecure they really are. And it brings their entire fake world crashing down around them, because narcissists believe that the entire world revolves around them. Everyone in their life is an extension of who they are. And while they're spinning their web of lies and exaggerations about their own accomplishments, there is a part of them, and I do believe that there is a part of them deep down that knows that they're stretching the truth. And from the minute that they start telling these lies, they become so paranoid about the fact that someday someone might uncover them. And so when a narcissist feels like he's losing you, right, or failing at something in front of you or the world, or, what I'll embody as an audience, it creates so much psychological distress and dissonance for them. Because narcissists are really incapable of tolerating failure. And they're also completely incapable of handling humiliation. Those two things are considered the worst types of failures that could ever happen to them. Why? Because their ego is actually really fragile. And it's fragile because they've inflated it so high. Their ego is really their only protection that they have from the world. It's fake and they've created it. So when their ego integrity is breached, narcissists often respond in ways that seem insanely out of proportion to circumstances for the average person, for those of us that are not narcissistic. So why is that so? Well, here's a big truth bomb. Narcissists never focus on self-growth when they're in a relationship. You see, their own self-assessment of their worth and value actually confirm to them that they're already a very evolved being, that they're extremely accomplished, and they can't even fathom why somebody else, including their spouse, might even remotely be disappointed in their behavior or even in the relationship. So by being so out of touch with the realities of the relationship, their reaction to your dissatisfaction is driven by fear, right? Because what happens is your eyes, your glasses, see clearer, they're wiped clean. And when they start noticing that they're losing you, they get really scared. And that leads me to number 3 which is their third biggest fear is loss. And when I say loss, I mean loss of supply from you. So when you're hypnotized by a narcissist, you only see this false image that they've created, right? And they've convinced you that that false image is actually real. And it creates this hold over you. And what we end up doing while we're in this trance is we're feeding their vain idea of who they are as they see themselves reflected in your eyes. So all they care about is how they're seen in the eyes of you and others in their life. Why? Because if they don't, then they don't even know who they are. They can't confirm that this fake reality is actually true. So when you wake up one day and actually deny them by saying no, or you're reacting differently than you used to, it triggers this fear in them that you're going to leave, you're going to move on to a whole other level without them. And most terrifyingly, detach from them. Because based on past behavior, right, when you were still in the trance, you would never say no because you didn't see this false image of them. And suddenly, when you wake up, this false image has no sway over you anymore. And so what happens to them is that they become terrified of failing to convince you of their pedestal status, of their specialness, of their uniqueness, of their amazingness. And they've become so used to knowing that they're the best thing that's ever happened to you. They also convince you that you're never going to do better than them and you can't live without them. So what happens when they can't convince you of that is they become really anxious and they go into this dark place of fear of rejection and abandonment. So why is that the place that they go? Well, when you reject or abandon a narcissist, what ends up happening is that they have to actually confront the emptiness that they feel inside, because without you feeding them, there's no one giving them what they need. And that really scares them. It's a really uncomfortable feeling for them. And what I've learned and what I've researched and read a lot about is the whole facade that they have created is not about love, you guys. Here's another big aha moment, okay? The facade that they've created is not about love. It's about attention. I'm going to say it again. The whole facade they've created is not about love. It's about attention. You see, in their childhood, they never actually received love. And so what they did instead was they attached to attention versus love. So they weren't ever able to attach to a parent. And then all of a sudden, here you come along one day, right? A potential partner that they get attached to because you're giving them attention. So at the end of the day, we're really that audience member that continues to applaud and watch and engage with the show. And when that applause, that engagement fades or stops, they go into a place of panic and fear. And I will never forget the day when I stopped applauding and giving into my normal ways of being. I mean, I literally just stopped, you guys. I stopped, meaning I didn't reply, I didn't engage. I started seeing who he was. And even if I did reply to a text or a phone call, I was very calm. I came from a place of neutrality because I learned all of this. And I'll never forget the day when he responded with fear in his voice and a quivering and a shakiness in his voice, because he knew he lost control of me. He knew that I had pulled away, and he didn't have that magical hold over me anymore because I took my power back. And so can you. One of the best ways to cope with the manipulation tactics of a narcissist, you guys, is to lay down firm and clear boundaries that do not allow the narcissist to breach. So what does that require from you? Well, that requires that you actually have strong will, as well as the willingness to admit that you're dealing with an individual who places his own needs ahead of yours. And narcissists have a really hard time handling things when a partner or when a spouse has begun to create and enforce boundaries, right? Because in their world, they can't conceive that you would exist outside of the world that they've created for you. You see, narcissists objectify people, right? They use us to meet their own needs. And sadly, they don't understand how to maintain normal relationships. So they don't understand when you need space or you're trying to assert more autonomy to feel more satisfied. They think it's impossible because they've created this world for you. How can you not be hypnotized into it? So when you're being used to prop up the ego of a narcissist, if you try to claim some space for yourself, what they see and feel is you stripping away part of their identity. Your devotion to the narcissist's needs and image is a measure of their own self-worth in their mind. So when you back away, narcissists are actually going to try that much harder to reel you back into their lives. And that's why it's so important to have a really strong backbone, a strong support system as you move out of their orbit, right? And I say this to you because I so badly want you to heal. I want you to get better. I want you to love again. And you deserve to get on with your life. And I'm sorry if you have been subject to a narcissist like I was. And I'm sorry that you had to experience that. I'm sorry that you may feel driven and somewhat obsessed to find solutions because you wake up in pain every day as though it just happened yesterday, right? We tailspin ourselves in their web sometimes, and we ultimately lost who we were before we met them and can't remember who that person is anymore. How many of you feel that way? I did. And I have another truth bomb for you guys, and that is, they can't love you. They've actually never loved anyone because they don't love themselves. I'm going to say it again. They can't love you because they've never loved anyone, and they don't even love themselves. You're an item to them that they can easily replace once they can't see themselves reflected back to you. You see, they're never really attached to anybody. And I always tell my clients in my Facebook group that the best way to show a narcissist that you're out of their trance, to show them that you're out of that web, is to just stop, breathe, and don't react. And here's that big reveal I talked about, you guys, at the beginning of the episode. You get to start remembering who you are without the narcissist attached. You are what they need to survive, and they've spent and invested so much time and energy into you. That is why they fear your healing more than anything else. They fear you picking yourself up. They fear you becoming whole again and getting on with the rest of your life, seeing them for who they really are. And you get to remember pieces of who you were that you lost, that you miss. And when that brainwashing comes to an end, it frustrates them. So they'll easily cast you aside and look for their next relationship because they don't know what it means to truly love somebody. And I said this before, you were just a thing that they needed to feed them. So their attachment to you is so different than what yours was to them. You know, I liken it to, for example, you buy a scarf, right? And it's one that's really heavy. It keeps you warm in the winter. It's cozy. It feels really good. And then spring hits and you need one that's lighter weight. You don't need such a heavy, thick wool one. And you want a brighter color because spring makes you think of, brighter colors. Well, your scarf is replaceable, right? From season to season. And I hate to break it to you, but here's my tough love. To a narcissist, so are you. They can't love, but guess what? You can. And you get to move on with your life and do the work to get yourself back, to get yourself stronger from this experience than you were before. And I know that you can. You know why? Because I did it. So many of my colleagues did it. So many of my clients are doing it. And I know that you can too. You get to move on with your life. You get to find happiness. You get to feel true joy and love. And yes, you will have some scars to show for, but your scars make you stronger and happier in ways that you cannot possibly imagine than you ever were before, you guys. Your divorce happens for you, not to you. It is the best gift you can give yourself, especially coming out from underneath a narcissist trance. And I hope that you heal. I truly do. And I hope that you move on. And I'm here to support you in any way. You are welcome to join my Facebook group, The Divorce Rehab. You are welcome to reach out to me. My contact information is in the show notes. I am here to listen. And I want to thank you all so much for tuning in, sending you tons of love, light, and joy. And I can't wait to talk to you next time. Mwah. Have a good day. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorced Woman's Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this episode with someone you know or spread the word on social media. This is how I reach more divorcees around the world and provide them with the support they need to create their next best life. And I would also love to continue the conversation with you. So please friend me on Facebook, join my private Facebook group, The Divorce Rehab, and follow me on Instagram at Divorce Rehab with Wendy. I'll see you next time.